Live-action One Piece. Now there's words to send shivers down the spine of any anime fan. And yet, interestingly enough, Netflix's live-action adaptation of the voluminous and extraordinarily successful manga is, in many ways, one of the most accurate and faithful adaptations of its kind. And yet, despite that, serves only really to prove yet again that adapting anime to live action is a fool's errand. Which might sound like a bit of a contradiction in terms. Surely, if the show sticks to the source material as closely as possible, then everything's gravy, right? And to an extent, it is. I would even go so far as to say out of all of the anime adaptations that have been made so far, One Piece is probably one of the best ones, if not the best ones. And if it was a show meant entirely for a very young audience of children, I even think it might do reasonably well. But as a honest-to-God serious adaptation of One Piece, it cannot, by definition, ever be more than a pale and inferior copy, for the simple and unavoidable reason that trying to adapt a 2D work into 3D live action simply doesn't work. No matter how hard you try, and no matter how good your intentions are. And to heap a little bit further praise on the show, because it does deserve some praise, the cast and the crew absolutely try their hardest. I'm gonna pronounce this wrong, but Inwaki Godi, I think, the kid playing Monkey D. Luffy, oh boy does he try. He's a little ball of energy on screen, he is. He'll shout, he'll scream, he'll do vast expansive gestures, and he'll play it up to 11. The issue is, that works for a 2D character that needs to express the majority of his emotions through his voice. Whereas in 3D, where you can see the actor in front of you, the acting comes across as flat, stale, and, well, not very good. It comes across as amateurish, because in reality, Monkey D. Luffy, the character, only has two moods: boundless, bright-faced optimism, and moments of determination when he's about to kick a boss's ass. And again, that works in a 2D medium, but the moment you transfer this into 3D, he just comes across as incredibly unnatural. It hits the uncanny valley and buries itself. Almost as if you took a drawing and brought it to life. This problem continues throughout the entirety of the production as, well, you can do things in 2D that you just can't in 3D. Axe Hand Morgan looks imposing as all hell in the manga and the anime, but the moment you try to do that with a human being, it just looks dumb. In manga and anime, we already have programmed our brains to accept things that we wouldn't otherwise. Part of signing the contract of disbelief is the idea that a dude having just an axe for a hand can somehow be a competent combatant. But when you see that in reality, regardless of how well it is shot, and it is actually rather well shot again, it just looks dumb. No matter how hard the actors may try, you're just never going to look at Arlong from the manga and then in the live action and not giggle a bit at the live action variant. And there is a very clear dividing line here between what your brain is willing to accept, the suspension of disbelief you're willing to commit to, that differs between anime/manga and live action. An excellent example of this is Roronoa Zoro, who is played here by Makenyu, and he does a fantastic job. He does the best job out of the entire crew, honestly. He is, quite convincingly, Roronoa Zoro. Even when he's doing his more ridiculous stunts and more, over-the-top movements, it actually feels pretty believable. But then again, Zoro is really only a guy whose primary defining character is his idiotic I carry my sword in my teeth thing. which looks dumb in live action, but the confidence of the man doing it, along with the fact that he can clearly handle his swords, and he looks obviously physically fit, sells the illusion relatively well. But this again instantly runs up against the brick wall of enormous purple fish person. That is simply a line that you cannot cross and have it remain believable in this medium. This problem, of course, also unsurprisingly stretches to the CGI, which is used only relatively sparingly. Now, displaying Luffy's ability to stretch, etc., was always going to be a pretty big ask in a live-action series. Some of it is awful. His initial scene, for example, where he stretches out his arm, is not very good at all. Like, you can see the CGI stretch issues that they're having there, where they've basically just taken the texture of his arm and dragged it out. On other occasions, it looks better, but still just really, really weird. Fortunately, again, they did recognize this, and there are relatively few scenes overall where the CGI is, well, actually used. And the show relies a lot more on traditional, good old-fashioned effects to show off the environment, for example, which look pretty damn good. The action scenes, too, are well choreographed. I mean, after suffering through Ahsoka, I suppose practically any action scene would look good by comparison, but they've clearly got some people who know what they're doing here. It's kind of weird in many ways to see a show that is as close as you could probably ever come to a good adaptation of an anime/manga and still realize that no matter how well you do it, no matter how much the crew and the actors try, the original product will simply always be superior. And there will never be a very good reason to choose to watch the live action over the anime, because the gap between the two presentations are simply too wide. And of course, since it is the current year, we do have to add in a race swap here and there, and the entire Fishman Village thing is basically turned into a question about slavery, as a little bit of real life must always, seemingly by definition, seep into any such product. It is, however, not too bad. It's not ruinous. Again, the majority of the cast do relatively well to acceptable. Luffy's acting problems, I suspect, is more to do with his character rather than the performance of the guy trying to carry out the job of bringing that character to life. Nami is not great, but not awful at all. She does the job well enough. Usopp certainly comes across as incredibly annoying, so there you go. That is essentially his character as well. And most of the supporting cast and the villains do serviceable jobs too. The overall story has also been quite well maintained, with the addition of liberal usage of flashbacks to inform us as to the various characters' backstories, which it's hardly the most elegant way of doing things, but seeing as they clearly wanted to avoid spending an entire episode on a single character's backstory, it is certainly a better option. All in all, as surprised as I am to say it, Netflix One Piece is, well, one of the best adaptations of an anime out there, and yet, at the end of the day, at least as far as I'm concerned, it only serves to further cement that we shouldn't make live-action adaptations of anime or manga. Because even with a crew that really do try and manage to carry out the obvious hijinks of an anime without cringing themselves to death, still just comes across as flat, and as a clearly, again, inferior version of the original. There simply doesn't really seem to be a reason for this product to exist when the anime already does. Other than, I suppose, to provide a English dubbed version to the audience that absolutely will not read subtitles, I suppose. I feel as if that might actually be a wider audience than I would want it to be, though, so it'll be interesting to see whether or not One Piece is an economic success. Because if it is, well, on the bright side, it would actually send a message to Netflix that the more faithful an adaptation is, the better. But it also probably means we're going to see more relatively pointless live-action adaptations of franchises that really probably could do without. However, if they manage to retain a relative level of interest and passion for the project, which I do genuinely believe that Netflix One Piece did manage, then I'll simply view it as a spin-off. A separate thing entirely for other people that, for some reason or another, really, really hate anime, but would still like to watch it. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.